For anyone that's been through emotional trauma, there are 4 basic defense mechanisms or survival strategies that our brain utilizes to try to help us deal with that trauma. And that's our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn trauma response. For the sake of this video, I want to focus on the fight response. And the reason for that is because it's when a person is stuck in this fight response that they can be confused and actually think that they are the narcissist. So we're going to examine 4 things in this video. We're going to talk about what that fight response is. We're going to talk about how it shows up in relationships. We're going to examine how you can evaluate if your behaviors are a sign of the fight response or if it's crossed the line into narcissistic abuse. Okay, we're going to talk about that. And last but not least, we're going to talk about what you can do to start balancing your fight trauma response. So there's a lot in this video. Make sure you watch to the end so that you get the tips to help. Okay, so that you're not just learning what it is, but you're getting information that will help you to work through it. Okay, so with that in mind, let's get started. For anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I'm also the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live together and we work through all of these things on Zoom together. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check out a free 7-day trial to see if it's something that would be good for you. So let's get started with that first question. What is the fight trauma response? The first thing that I want to mention is that our trauma responses, whether it's our fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, they all have a healthy side, right? In other words, we need each of these trauma responses, but they also have the polarized, unhealthy side of them. So here is the scale, basically, of the fight response. The healthy side, it is a healthy fight response to be assertive. It's a healthy fight response to have boundaries, to have courage to do things that are challenging, to have determination, to continue moving in a direction that is not necessarily easy. And it is a healthy trauma response to have leadership skills. So the point of showing you the scale is to help you to realize that we don't want to get rid of our trauma response. We just want it to be more balanced, because as you can see, the polarized side of the fight response is somebody that is perfectionistic, type A personality, somebody that feels entitled, controlling, and going further and further towards the opposite direction is somebody that is explosive and narcissistic. So I encourage you, just take a moment to kind of see where you're at on with your fight response. Evaluate which of these descriptions resonates with you at the moment, and please do so without judgment. Okay, don't blame yourself, don't get mad at yourself, just have curiosity, notice it. That's the first step. I do want to say that we all tend to gravitate to a dominant trauma response, whether it's fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We all have like a dominant and a secondary trauma response. However, I want to make this known too, that many that fawn, and that's their natural trauma response, sometimes after a long-term abusive relationship, they may fling over to fight. And it may seem like that's their, suddenly that's their go-to trauma response. And that's often because they were abused for so long that they just want to protect themselves. And so without knowing how to balance their trauma response, they've just flung to the other side. As they heal, they go back to the fawn, but the healthy side of fawning. And that's for another video. Okay. But I do want to say that you may look back at your life and be like, but that wasn't my go-to trauma response, but it is now. Yes, that is often the case after a long-term abusive relationship, that you fling over to that side again in an effort to try to protect yourself. Now, here's the thing with our trauma responses. Okay. You can leave a toxic relationship, and you detox your life from anyone that previously was abusive. They're not there anymore, but your trauma response doesn't simply go back to the healthy side on its own. Think of a light switch. You know, the light switches that have the string and somebody's like yanking and yanking. Think of a child that yanks and yanks and yanks until the string comes off, and now that light is stuck in the on position. You can move, you can let an enormous amount of time go by, and that light switch will stay stuck in the on position until you fix it, right? There's no amount of time that's suddenly going to make that light switch be able to go off and on without fixing it. Well, that's the same thing with our trauma response. It's not enough to just leave a toxic relationship. We have to then take time to rewire our brain and our trauma responses so that they don't stay stuck. In this case, so that the fight response doesn't stay stuck in the on position. With that in mind, that kind of leads me into the second question, how it shows up in relationships. One of the most obvious ways that a trauma response, a fight trauma response will show up in a relationship is the fact that you will be easily triggered. You will think the person is slighting you when often they're not, especially now if you're out of all toxic relationships. It could be a coworker, it could be a boss, it could be a friend, but you find yourself easily triggered. And when you're triggered, anger comes up. And when that anger comes up, you can come across extremely forceful. Okay. That happens a lot if you're stuck in the fight response. It makes relationships really hard because the other person kind of feels like they have to walk on eggshells. And that's where it starts getting confusing. Like, am I the narcissist? You know, they're telling me they're walking on eggshells around me. What's happening is the external stimuli of whatever is happening outside of you. Trauma gets stuck in the brain, right? And it's like your brain is always monitoring anything similar. So maybe the person says, you know, wow, I can't believe that. And they're just surprised. They're not doubting you. They're not trying to put you down. They're not trying to invalidate you. But if you were not believed for reality for a long time, you're going to snap. That fight response is going to come on and you're going to come at them really strong. And what it was is that your brain saw some kind of similarity. And by the way, that happens outside of your conscious awareness. So it's not like it's something you are directly choosing, okay? But it just creates a lot of walking on eggshells for people around you, and you're easily triggered. Another way that it can sometimes show up is in a defense, trying to keep yourself safe. You might develop like sarcastic humor and maybe put people down playing or joking, but it's this way of trying to keep yourself safe. You're trying to avoid getting hurt, but it comes across this way and it can cause people to kind of feel uncomfortable around you. And I'm talking about maybe people at work. And the difficult thing about being stuck in the fight response is that it keeps you stuck in what we call limbic system trauma loops. These are the roads in your mind that are so well worn that a thought will happen. It will send your mind down this patterned thought that's really hard to break out of. So for example, somebody says something, you're triggered, you think that they're putting you down or you think that they're attacking you. So your fight response gets kicked on. So you are aggressive, they withdraw, then you're afraid that you're going to be abandoned. And so in your fight response gets kicked on even more, trying to control what's going on so that you're not abandoned, but that just pushes the person further away and you get stuck in these push and pull relationships. And your loved ones might say that you're creating this push and pull relationship. In a sense, that is what's happening because of the fight response. Okay, so moving on, let's go into how to determine if you're the narcissist or you're simply stuck in your fight response. So 3 things that can help. Okay, the first is the fact that you are wondering if you're the narcissist. Now, if you're wondering with a sense of pride, that's not a good thing. As if being a narcissist, like you're proud of that, that's not a good sign. But if you're worried that you might be the narcissist, that's a good indication that you're not, okay? The second thing that you want to ask yourself is, can you own and take responsibility for what you've done? In other words, can you self-reflect and notice like, wow, I was triggered here. I shouldn't have acted like that. That was wrong on my part. Or do you find yourself blaming the other person? If you're blaming the other person's actions, behavior, or lack of whatever for your trauma response getting triggered, then that's another narcissistic trait, because a narcissist never owns anything. They're so perfect, right? That the thought that they did anything wrong just isn't going to happen. But if you can say, I've done this, this is how I'm being, I don't want to be this way, then that is a really good indication that you're not a narcissist. And the last way to tell is, are you actively doing the inner work to improve and help yourself get a healthier fight response? Or do you find yourself seeing that information and not wanting to do anything about it? If you're dismissive, as if it doesn't matter and there's nothing you can do and you don't care, then that's not a good sign. But if you are actively trying to calm your trauma response and trying to work through the damage that was done to you, because you're in that trauma response because of trauma. Okay. So if you're willing to do the inner work and you're willing to do it without blaming anyone else or making others responsible for your feelings, then again, put yourself at ease, let go of labels, and let go of judging yourself. Judging yourself isn't going to help your trauma response to be healthier. Okay. That being said, let's talk about what helps. I want to give you 2 tips that can help you to start calming your fight response. Okay. This is not an all-inclusive list of things. This is just 2 things that can help. So it's a great place to start. Okay. The first tip I want to give you is to start noticing your anger when it comes up. And remember that anger is a secondary emotion. It's not the real emotion that you're feeling. There is a real feeling underneath the anger that is a more vulnerable emotion. It's usually fear, pain, sadness, guilt. And what happens is, if you were in an abusive relationship and you felt those emotions in the past and you paid a high price for feeling them, that's when our trauma response starts kicking on and our anger tries to hide those feelings from us. Okay? Because when we're angry, at least we feel in control and we feel a measure of strength. When we feel the other emotions, we feel vulnerable. So your brain thinks, let's get angry because it's less painful. Okay. But if we just focus on the anger, we'll never heal the trauma response. So start asking yourself, what is my anger trying to protect me from? What emotion, what vulnerable emotion is my anger trying to protect me from? And if you want more help with that, you may want to check out my recorded workshop, which is how to release past anger and resentment. Super powerful. Okay, so I'll leave the link here for you. But that's the first step, is to really identify the proper emotion. Because if you try to stop the anger, but it's being fueled by something else, you're going to be stuck in symptom management for the rest of your life. Better to get to the symptoms so that you can work through it. Okay. The second tip that I want to give is to strengthen your empathy emotions. I like to view our emotions like muscles. Okay. The more you exercise certain muscles, the stronger they get. If you don't strengthen certain muscles, they will atrophy. So what you can do is start imagining what it feels like to be the person that you're interacting with, or the person that your fight response is creating challenges with. Think about what they might be feeling. Think about the reasons why they might be feeling that, what that does for them. That's going to help balance the fight response, because what you're starting to do is you're starting to engage in a different trauma response on the healthy side, and that's the fawn response. When you can develop a strong empathy, that will help you to balance that. And ultimately, that's what we want to do. What helps us to balance our overactive trauma responses is to start engaging in the other trauma responses, but on the healthy side. And I am going to be going through these one by one, little by little. But I did want to give you these 2 tips to help you so that you have something you can actively start doing. Remember though, this is rewiring the brain. You know, this is not easy stuff. And if you're struggling and you're having a hard time doing it alone, make sure you check out the Thriver School of Transformation, because that's what we do. We work through all of the side effects of complex PTSD little by little together. So you don't have to do it alone. You can do it among a community of people that really understand.